Have you ever looked at an old photograph and felt like something was off? Today, we're diving into one of the most unsettling photographic mysteries from the early 20th century. This isn't about ghosts or supernatural forces. This is about a real photograph from 1912 that hid a disturbing secret for over a century. What restoration experts discovered in a bride's veil left everyone who saw it speechless. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. And before we begin, I want to mention that I'm developing another channel with even more intriguing content. Make sure to check it out in the description below. The Harrison Historical Society in Portland, Maine, had been quietly working through their archives for months. It was routine work, cataloging, digitizing, and restoring photographs from the early 1900s. Most days were uneventful, filled with faded portraits of stern-faced families and sepia-toned landscapes. But on a cold October morning in 2019, restoration specialist Dr. Sarah Chen pulled a photograph from a deteriorating envelope that would change everything. The photograph showed a wedding couple from 1912. On the back, written in elegant cursive, were the names Eleanor and Thomas Whitmore, June 15th, 1912. The image itself seemed unremarkable at first glance. A young bride in an elaborate Edwardian gown stood beside her groom in a formal suit. Eleanor's smile was soft, almost shy, while Thomas gazed at her with obvious affection. The setting appeared to be a garden, with blurred foliage in the background and soft natural lighting that gave the photograph an ethereal quality. Dr. Chen had restored hundreds of similar photographs. Wedding portraits from this era followed predictable patterns, stiff poses, formal expressions, elaborate clothing. But something about this particular image caught her attention. The photograph was in remarkably good condition for its age. The details crisp and well-preserved. Eleanor's wedding dress was stunning, featuring intricate lacework and delicate beading that must have taken months to create. Her veil, a masterpiece of fine netting and embroidered flowers, cascaded down her back in elegant folds. As Dr. Chen began the initial scanning process, she adjusted the photograph under the high-resolution scanner. The equipment they used was state-of-the-art, capable of capturing details invisible to the naked eye. She'd run the scan at maximum resolution, standard procedure for photographs they planned to add to the digital archive. The process took nearly 20 minutes, the scanner's arm moving methodically across the delicate paper. When the scan completed, Dr. Chen pulled up the file on her monitor. She zoomed in slowly, section by section, checking for damage that might need digital repair. The groom's face appeared first, clear, well-defined features, a hint of nervousness in his eyes despite his composed expression. Then Eleanor's face. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old, with delicate features and eyes that held something Dr. Chen couldn't quite identify. Was it happiness? Uncertainty? Fear? She continued zooming through the image, checking the dress, the background, the composition. Everything appeared normal until she reached the veil. At first, she thought it was simply a shadow or perhaps a flaw in the original photograph, a common occurrence with images this old. But as she increased the magnification, her breath caught in her throat. There was something in the veil, something that shouldn't be there. Dr. Chen leaned closer to her monitor, squinting at the screen. The object, if it could be called that, was partially obscured by the translucent fabric, creating a distorted, almost abstract shape. She adjusted the contrast and brightness, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The more she enhanced the image, the more disturbed she became. "Marcus, can you come look at this?" she called to her colleague in the adjacent room. Marcus Rodriguez, a photographer and restoration expert with 15 years of experience, walked over with his coffee mug in hand. "What's up? Find another duplicate we need to merge?" "Look at this," Dr. Chen said, pointing at her screen. "Tell me what you see." Marcus set down his coffee and leaned in, studying the magnified section of the veil. His casual expression gradually shifted to one of confusion, then concern. "Is that What is that? I don't know, Dr. Chen admitted. I've never seen anything like it. They spent the next hour analyzing the photograph, running it through various filters and enhancement algorithms. Each adjustment revealed more details, and each detail made the image more disturbing. Whatever was caught in Eleanor Whitmore's veil in 1912 had been photographed with perfect clarity. They just hadn't been able to see it until now. Marcus finally broke the silence. We need to show this to Director Morrison. If you're enjoying the video so far, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. And let me know in the comments what you think this mystery could be about. Director Janet Morrison had run the Harrison Historical Society for nearly 2 decades. In that time, she'd seen her share of unusual historical artifacts and strange stories, but nothing quite prepared her for what Dr. Chen and Marcus showed her that afternoon. The three of them stood in Morrison's office, the enhanced photograph displayed on a large monitor. Morrison studied it in silence for several minutes, her expression unreadable. She was a woman who prided herself on rational thinking and methodical research, but even she couldn't deny the unsettling nature of what they were looking at. "Have you contacted anyone else about this?" Morrison asked finally. "No," Dr. Chen replied. "We wanted to show you first. We weren't sure. We don't even know what we're looking at." Morrison nodded slowly. "Right. First things first. We need to verify the photograph's authenticity. I want a full analysis done. Check the paper, the chemical composition of the developing solution if we can, carbon dating if necessary. We need to make absolutely certain this photograph is from 1912 and hasn't been tampered with." Over the next 3 weeks, the photograph underwent extensive testing. They brought in Dr. William Ashford, a forensic photography expert from Boston University who had worked on authenticating historical documents for the FBI. Dr. Ashford's examination was thorough and methodical. He analyzed the paper stock, confirmed it matched materials used in 1912, and verified the silver gelatin print process was consistent with photographic techniques from that era. "There's no evidence of digital manipulation," Dr. Ashford concluded in his report. "The photograph appears to be an authentic gelatin silver print from the early 1910s. Whatever we're seeing in the veil was captured by the original camera in 1912. With the photograph's authenticity confirmed, Morrison authorized a deeper investigation into Eleanor and Thomas Whitmore. She assigned Marcus to conduct the historical research, while Dr. Chen continued analyzing the photograph itself. Marcus began his search at the Portland Public Library, diving into census records, newspaper archives, and church registries. The Whitmore name appeared frequently in Portland's historical records. They'd been a prominent family in the shipping industry. Finding Eleanor and Thomas specifically took several days of cross-referencing different documents. He finally located their marriage certificate. Eleanor Mary Hutchins married Thomas Edward Whitmore on June 15, 1912, at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Portland. Eleanor was 19 years old. Thomas was 26. The ceremony was performed by Reverend Harold Pemberton, with 6 witnesses signing the certificate. But it was the newspaper archive that provided the most chilling information. Marcus found the wedding announcement in the Portland Daily Press, dated June 14, 1912, the day before the wedding. It was a typical society page feature, describing Eleanor's dress in elaborate detail and listing the prominent families who would attend. The article painted a picture of a grand social event, one of the season's most anticipated weddings. Then, on June 18, 1912, just 3 days after the wedding, Marcus found another article. This one was much shorter, tucked away on page 7. "Local bride vanishes, family seeks information." The article reported that Eleanor Whitmore, née Hutchins, had disappeared from her new home on the evening of June 17th. Her husband Thomas had reported her missing after returning from his office to find the house empty and Eleanor's belongings undisturbed. The Portland Police Department was investigating, but no foul play was suspected. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he continued searching. He found several follow-up articles over the next few weeks. The police investigation had turned up nothing. No witnesses, no clues, no explanation. Eleanor had simply vanished. Thomas Whitmore had offered a substantial reward for information, but no credible leads emerged. The most disturbing detail appeared in an article from July 1912. A neighbor reported seeing Eleanor standing in the window of the Whitmore house on the night she disappeared, wearing her wedding dress and veil. The neighbor, Mrs. Adelaide Foster, stated she'd thought it odd at the time, but assumed Eleanor was simply admiring her wedding attire. When she looked back moments later, Eleanor was gone. Marcus printed every article he could find and hurried back to the Historical Society. When he showed Morrison and Dr. Chen what he'd discovered, the room fell silent. "She disappeared 2 days after the wedding," Morrison said quietly. "And this photograph, it might be the last image ever taken of her." Dr. Chen pulled up the enhanced image again, zooming in on the mysterious shape in the veil. With the context of Eleanor's disappearance, the photograph took on an entirely different meaning. What had seemed merely strange now felt ominous. "We need to find out more about what happened to her," Morrison decided. "Marcus, keep digging. Look for death certificates, any later mentions of Eleanor or Thomas. Check hospital records, asylum registries if you have to. Dr. Chen, I want you to see if you can enhance that image any further. We need to know exactly what we're looking at." As the team dispersed to continue their research, none of them could shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something much darker than a simple historical mystery. The investigation consumed the next month. Marcus worked 14-hour days, chasing down every possible lead about Eleanor Whitmore's fate. Dr. Chen spent countless hours at her computer, running the photograph through increasingly sophisticated enhancement algorithms. And Morrison coordinated their efforts, gradually assembling a picture of events from 1912 that grew more disturbing with each new discovery. Marcus's breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While searching through probate records, he discovered that Thomas Whitmore had died in 1918 during the influenza pandemic. His estate had been substantial, but there was something unusual about the will. It had been written in 1913, just 1 year after his wedding, and it made no mention of Eleanor. The omission seemed deliberate, as if she'd never existed. Following this thread, Marcus contacted the Whitmore family descendants. After some searching, he located a great-granddaughter of Thomas's brother, a woman named Patricia Whitmore Chen, who lived in Boston. When Marcus explained his research, Patricia agreed to meet him. They met at a cafe near Patricia's home. She was in her 70s, a retired schoolteacher with sharp eyes and a measured way of speaking. She carried a worn leather folder that she placed carefully on the table between them. "I've known about Eleanor since I was a girl," Patricia said. "My grandmother, Thomas's sister-in-law, used to talk about her sometimes, always in whispers. The family considered it a scandal that was better left buried." "What did your grandmother say about her?" Marcus asked, pulling out his notebook. Patricia opened the folder, revealing several old documents and photographs. She said Eleanor was troubled. That's the word she used, troubled. She'd been engaged to Thomas for 2 years before they married, and during that time there were incidents. "What kind of incidents?" "Eleanor claimed to see things, people who weren't there. She'd have episodes where she seemed to be somewhere else entirely, talking to invisible presences. Her family was wealthy, and they kept it quiet. But there were whispers. Some people thought she had a nervous condition. Others—" Patricia hesitated. "Others thought it was something darker." Marcus leaned forward. "Did your grandmother say what happened the night Eleanor disappeared?" Patricia's expression grew somber. "She said Thomas came home and found Eleanor in their bedroom, still wearing her wedding dress. Eleanor was talking to someone, having what appeared to be a conversation, but there was no one else in the room. When Thomas tried to approach her, Eleanor became hysterical. She screamed that they were taking her, that she'd always belonged to them. Thomas ran to get help, but when he returned with neighbors, Eleanor was gone. The room was empty. She pushed one of the photographs across the table. It showed Thomas Whitmore in his later years, probably taken around 1916 or 1917. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted. "This is what Eleanor's disappearance did to him," Patricia said quietly. "My grandmother said he was never the same. He became obsessed with spiritualism, spent thousands of dollars on mediums and psychics, trying to contact Eleanor. He died believing she'd been taken by something beyond his understanding." Marcus studied the photograph of Thomas, then pulled out the wedding photograph on his phone. "Mrs. Whitmore Chen, I need to show you something." He zoomed in on the veil, showing her the enhanced image. "We found this in the original wedding photograph. Do you have any idea what this could be?" Patricia stared at the image for a long moment, her face paling. "My God," she whispered. "Grandmother told me something else. She said that on the wedding day, several guests commented that Eleanor seemed different, distant, and during the ceremony, when the veil was lifted, one of the bridesmaids fainted. No one ever explained why. They just said she'd been overcome by the emotion of the moment." Meanwhile, back at the Historical Society, Dr. Chen had made her own discovery. Using AI-powered enhancement software developed for satellite imagery analysis, she'd managed to sharpen the image in the veil to an unprecedented degree. What she saw made her immediately call Morrison. When Morrison arrived, Dr. Chen had the image displayed on her largest monitor. The enhancement was remarkable and deeply unsettling. The shape in the veil, previously indistinct, now showed clear structure. It appeared to be organic, with textures that suggested tissue or membrane. But its form defied easy description. It seemed to shift depending on how you looked at it, almost as if it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Is this even possible?" Morrison asked, staring at the screen. "Could something like this have been captured on a 1912 camera?" "According to every test we've run, yes," Dr. Chen replied. "The photograph is authentic. Whatever the camera captured that day was really there, whether anyone could see it with their naked eyes or not." Morrison pulled up a chair, studying the image intently. "I've been doing some research of my own," she said. "In 1912, there was a lot of interest in spirit photography, photographers who claimed they could capture ghosts and supernatural entities on film. Most of it was proven to be fraud, double exposures and trick photography. But there were some cases that were never satisfactorily explained." "You think this is related to that?" Dr. Chen asked. "I don't know what to think," Morrison admitted. "But I do know this. We have an authenticated photograph from 1912 showing something that shouldn't exist, of a woman who disappeared without a trace 2 days after her wedding. And according to the historical record, she spent her final days talking to beings no one else could see." When Marcus returned from Boston and shared what Patricia had told him, the 3 researchers sat in Morrison's office, surrounded by documents, photographs, and printed analyses. They'd uncovered a wealth of information about Eleanor Whitmore, but every answer seemed to generate more questions. "So what do we do with this?" Marcus asked finally. "Do we publish? Contact other experts?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "We document everything thoroughly," she said finally. "We preserve the photograph and all our research, but I think we need to be very careful about how, or if, we make this public, because if what we've found is real, I don't think anyone is ready for the implications. If you're still watching, leave a comment below about what you think happened to Eleanor, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more mysteries like this one." 3 months after the initial discovery, the team had exhausted every conventional avenue of research. They'd examined the photograph from every possible angle, interviewed historians and descendants, and compiled a comprehensive file on Eleanor Whitmore's life and disappearance. But the central mystery remained unsolved, and perhaps, Morrison began to think, unsolvable. Dr. Chen had continued to refine her analysis of the image in the veil. Using pattern recognition software, she'd identified structural elements that seemed to repeat throughout the anomaly. The patterns didn't match anything in biological databases. They weren't fungal, bacterial, or related to any known organism, but they also weren't random. There was organization there, intentionality, as if whatever they were looking at had been designed or had evolved according to rules that human science hadn't yet discovered. One evening, working late at the Historical Society, Dr. Chen made one final enhancement. She'd been experimenting with polarization filters, trying to see if different light wavelengths would reveal additional details. As the processed image appeared on her screen, she gasped. The polarized view showed something she'd missed before, faint traces of the same anomalous patterns elsewhere in the photograph. They were barely visible, requiring maximum enhancement to detect, but they were there, in the shadows of the garden behind Eleanor, in the folds of her dress, even in the air around Thomas's head, like dust motes caught in sunlight. But it was their concentration in the veil that was most striking. Whatever these patterns represented, they surrounded Eleanor completely on her wedding day, as if she was enveloped by something the camera could capture, but human eyes couldn't perceive. Dr. Chen printed the new images and called an emergency meeting for the next morning. When she showed Morrison and Marcus what she'd found, the implications were inescapable. "It's like she's surrounded by it," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever this is, it wasn't just in the veil. It was everywhere around her." Morrison studied the images in silence. Over the past months, she'd read extensively about Eleanor's life before her wedding. The young woman had been described by contemporaries as sensitive, artistic, and given to what her family called flights of fancy. But there were darker notes too. A childhood friend's letter mentioned that Eleanor sometimes spoke of the voices that no one else could hear. A diary entry from her mother worried about Eleanor's insistence that she was being watched by things between the world. "I think Eleanor knew," Morrison said finally. "I think she'd been experiencing this her entire life, whatever this is. And I think her family knew too, which is why they pushed for the quick wedding. They thought a husband, a normal married life, might cure her of her perceptions. But it didn't," Dr. Chen said. "No, it didn't." Morrison pulled up the last known photograph of Thomas Whitmore, taken shortly before his death. "And I think Thomas spent the rest of his life trying to understand what took his wife from him. All that money spent on mediums and spiritualists, he was trying to reach her, or at least to understand where she'd gone." Marcus had been quiet, staring at the enhanced images. "What if," he said slowly, "what if Eleanor didn't disappear in the way we think? What if she didn't go anywhere? What if she just stopped being visible?" The suggestion hung in the air, too disturbing to easily dismiss. The neighbor who'd seen Eleanor in the window that final night had reported that one moment she was there, the next she'd simply vanished, not walked away, not left the room, but disappeared as if she'd never existed. The wedding photograph was taken by Jonathan Pierce, a well-known Portland photographer, Morrison said, pulling up her notes. "I found his diary in the main Historical Society archives. He wrote about the Whitmore wedding. He said something felt wrong the entire time, but he couldn't identify what. He wrote, 'The bride stood perfectly still for the photograph, but I had the strangest sensation that she wasn't entirely present, as if I was photographing a memory rather than a person.'" Dr. Chen pulled up the wedding photograph again, looking at Eleanor's face with new understanding. The young woman's expression, which they'd initially read as shy happiness, now seemed almost resigned. Her eyes looked past the camera, focused on something beyond the frame. "She knew," Dr. Chen said softly. "Look at her face. She knew something was going to happen." Over the following weeks, Morrison prepared a detailed report on their findings. It was a careful document, presenting facts without speculation, photographs without interpretation. She included the historical research, the technical analysis, and the testimony from Patricia Whitmore Chen. But she stopped short of drawing conclusions. "Some mysteries," she wrote in her introduction, "resist easy explanation." The question of what happened to Eleanor Whitmore and what the 1912 photograph truly captured may never be definitively answered. We present these findings not as a solution, but as an invitation to deeper inquiry. The report was filed in the Historical Society's archives, accessible to researchers, but not actively publicized. Morrison, Dr. Chen and Marcus agreed that forcing the mystery into the public spotlight would invite sensationalism and speculation that wouldn't honor Eleanor's memory or advance genuine understanding. But privately, late at night when she was alone with the photograph, Dr. Chen would zoom in on Eleanor's face and wonder. Had the young bride known, on that June day in 1912, that she was standing on the threshold between worlds? Had she felt whatever surrounded her, captured by the camera but invisible to the wedding guests? And in those final moments before she disappeared, had she finally seen clearly what had been with her all along? The photograph remained in the Historical Society's collection, professionally preserved and carefully stored. Occasionally, researchers would request to see it, drawn by whispers of the mystery it contained. Dr. Chen always supervised these viewings personally, watching as visitors leaned in close to study Eleanor's face, the elaborate veil, the shadows in the garden. And sometimes, if the light was just right and the viewer stood at the correct angle, they would see it too. That strange distortion in the veil, that hint of something that shouldn't be there. Most would attribute it to a flaw in the photograph or a trick of the light, but a very few, would step back with a sharp intake of breath, recognizing that they were looking at evidence of something that challenged everything they thought they knew about reality. Eleanor Whitmore's final fate remained unknown. The Portland police never solved her disappearance. Thomas Whitmore died without ever learning what happened to his wife. And the photograph, that single frozen moment from a summer wedding in 1912, continued to guard its secret, a door left open to questions that perhaps were never meant to be answered. In the years that followed the investigation, Dr. Chen occasionally received messages from people who claimed to have had similar experiences. Photographs that captured things invisible to the naked eye, loved ones who spoke of perceiving presences others couldn't see, accounts of people who simply vanished without explanation. She filed these reports carefully, but never pursued them actively. Some doors, she'd decided, were better left closed. But on quiet evenings, when the Historical Society was empty and the only sound was the hum of the climate control system protecting their collections, Dr. Chen would sometimes pull up the photograph of Eleanor Whitmore. She would study that young face, that elaborate veil, those shadows in the garden, and she would wonder if Eleanor had found peace wherever she was, or if she remained somewhere between worlds, caught forever in that liminal space the photograph had captured for a single, perfect, terrible moment. The mystery endured because some questions don't have answers, only witnesses, and the wedding photograph from 1912 stood as testament to the possibility that reality was far stranger and more complex than anyone dared to imagine. The Eleanor Whitmore case remains one of the most compelling, unsolved mysteries in American history. Despite exhaustive research and modern technology, we're no closer to understanding what happened to her or what was captured in her wedding photograph that June day in 1912. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below. I love hearing your thoughts and answering your questions about these mysteries. What do you think happened to Eleanor? Do you believe some photographs can capture things we can't normally see? Share your theories in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos exploring the unexplained mysteries hidden in history's archives.